We actually measured the 405 traffic from the weekend before to the weekend of Carmageddon. Round numbers, the traffic reduction on the 405 at the south end and at the north end here in Burbank Boulevard was about 20%. So 80% of the people who normally use the 405 on a Saturday or who used it the previous Saturday used it on Carmageddon Saturday and got off. So you all saw Carmageddon. You all saw what this town looked like. That was a 20% reduction in traffic. Not 80%, not 90%, 20%. So now the question is there a way in which we can reduce traffic, say 10%, forget 20. We could just reduce traffic on a daily basis by 10% by modifying people's behavior, not by punishing them, not by telling them they're going to have to pay $12 to get on that freeway, but by appealing to their common sense that if we all do this together, we'll all get to work faster. That's not to say that the congestion pricing may not have to be imposed in some fashion, but it's not the only way to do it. So what I'm looking for, I come back to that Daily News headline, I still believe that Angelenos, I'll ask you, you all live here, is there anybody here who twice a month would not be willing to either use public transportation to get to and from the office, work at home, as many do, or find some other way not to use your normal, your automobile 2 days a week, say every other Thursday, every other Monday, whatever the day is. Is there anybody here who couldn't live with that kind of scenario? You couldn't. Okay, fine. Okay, okay, fine. That's one. Okay, and there are ways to address that issue. By the way, we're talking peak hours. Now, kids probably go to school during the peak hours, but all I'm saying is that's what Carmageddon was all about. That was what the Olympic Games was all about. Is people modifying their behaviors for, in the case of the Olympics, for 2 weeks. In the case of Carmageddon, for 36 hours, 48 hours. I believe that each and every, I can do it, and I'm not a salaried, I mean, I don't have to punch a clock, so I have a little more flexibility. But I have to be in my car all the time, getting from place to place, and panels and speeches and ribbon cuttings and board meetings and all that stuff. I can do it. I would make it my business to organize my schedule, as I already have. I told my secretary, don't ever schedule me west of the 405 if I'm not out of there by 3 o'clock or after 7:30. I don't want to be stuck ever again in an hour-and-a-half commute from Santa Monica to Westwood. That I already do it, and so do a lot of people. If we can formalize it in some way, it would have to come from the ground up. It's not going to be imposed by the top down, by the politicians down. But I've always felt like your dentist. When the pain of the tooth gets bad enough, you'll finally go to the dentist. If you don't like dentists, you'll finally like them when you have to do something about the pain. And when the pain gets bad enough in traffic, and it is, and it will get worse, then people will be open to other ideas. We haven't talked about one-way streets. Talk about congestion pricing and widening a freeway by a lane. We couldn't get the city of Los Angeles to make Pico and Olympic Boulevard one-way couplet streets because of the opposition of the people, businesses, residents. Some of the opposition was legit, some of it was not. But we couldn't get to first base on something that was so simple that would have helped move traffic in a much more efficient way without doing any damage to anybody. If we can't get a one-way couplet system going outside of downtown Los Angeles in this town, we're not going to get very much else done. So we have to appeal to common sense, appeal to a common common cause, get everybody in common cause to do something that modifies their behavior just modestly. This doesn't require a permanent 100% of the time modification of your behavior. It requires twice a month. We can all do it. Most of us can do it.
If I can just jump in to answer Marv's question as well. You brought up the question of trucks, and I think that's a little bit what Joe was talking about is how do we get trucks out of the free lanes to a truck-only lane so that they are not impacting congestion. Well, one of the ways to do that is to create a truck-only toll lane, and you have to do it so that you create a value for the trucks to do it. So you build the lane so that a truck, instead of hauling one trailer, can haul 3 trailers, right? And then they can get someplace faster, they can move more product, so the truck driver makes more money. You find ways to incentivize people to do the things you want them to do. You know, now I don't think trucks are a huge problem on the 405, but you know, on the west side of LA, it's a totally different problem. But on the 710, on the 110, you know, trucks are an issue, and creating some other way for trucks to get where they're going, to do it faster and make more money doing it, that's going to work for them.
I'd like to just build on those comments. At MTA, we're working on 2 potential P3s tolls on the 710 north and south, south one being for trucks for the reasons just outlined. We're working with, we're very early stages of evaluating potential toll facility up in Pasadena area, however that might work out, maybe under the 405. We're also working with the Northern County guys on a potential truck lane up in the north to get stuff over to Victorville without coming down the I-5, without going out to 210, the 134. So, I mean, I do think the 91 does show if you can provide value, people will pay. So you got to be careful. You got a right calculation on what the value is and what you can charge for it. But this is a business proposition. If you do it well, you'll make some money on it and create value.
Okay, we have time for one more question, and I'm going to give this gentleman put his hand up first, but I'm also going to give a chance for our host to speak. So I'm going to split it with you first, and then you're going to have the last word too.
Thank you, Art. Since we're here in the Valley and the panel discussing Measure R, I wonder if you could discuss a bit about where we are on that very last project that seems to be tacked on, which is a transit link through this overpass. Where we are in terms of the analysis that Metro is doing, and it could very well perhaps be a PPP project as well. I guess. So, some thoughts on that.
Well, I mean, you're correct. It's way out there. It's in the 3rd decade, but we've begun to do some initial work on what a toll facility paralleling under the 405 might look like. It's way early, but we think it might be economically viable to do such a project as that. One of the best things about working at MTA is we have a board which is willing to be experimental and a little entrepreneurial. So, you know, we are having some great discussions on truck lanes, on the 710 projects, the High Desert Corridor, the 405. I don't think the model doesn't work so well for transit projects, but for the highway projects, there could be some exciting applications. The 405 might be a transit and a highway project, HOV project. So we're early, but we're working on it.
And there's $1 billion in the 3rd decade of Measure R money in that. And if America Fast Forward accelerated the 3rd decade projects into the 1st decade, we could be on our way much sooner. That's why this is so potentially exciting.
Many cities are now embracing a bike-friendly environment where you have, within a certain radius, you really have bike-friendly, so people get to the stores or get to their work biking, and they get to exercise while they get to a destination without getting
Thrive.
traffic. Would that be something for Los Angeles? Would that be environmental?
If I can just comment, we're in favor of that if you are not taking away other capacity. You know, the idea of bike lanes, listen, the more choices you give people, the more power they have to make the choices. So I think adding bike lanes is a great option. You know, there's also the question of scarce resources. You know, are bike lanes going to make the kind of difference on arterials that adding a lane would make, or adding like we're looking at Wilshire, adding the express lane on Wilshire Boulevard? I don't think they provide the kind of volume that does that. I bike to work whenever I can. whenever I don't have to go to another meeting. I live about 3 miles away from the office. It's a great ride. I think it's fantastic. Would I want to see my tax dollars go towards putting a bike lane on Sepulveda Boulevard so I could ride up Sepulveda Boulevard? No way, because when I have to drive, that would make it a nightmare. So I'll leave it to these guys to make any other comments on that.
Right now, you have bikes commonly on MTA buses. If you ride MTA trains, bikes are on them all the time. The Metrolink train I was on this morning had bikes on it. So we're seeing that's another shift which is occurring, which will be, I think, increasing in the future.
My son is a practicing lawyer downtown. Decided after he graduated high school that he didn't want to own a car, and doesn't own a car in Los Angeles, and he uses his bike. I've kind of vicariously gotten to know the bike culture of LA through him, and it's remarkable. I mean, there's a tremendous growth in bike usage, not just for recreation, but to get to and from work. As Art says, we've encouraged that in our own systems. When we built the Orange Line, we built a bikeway next to it, both for recreation and people can get to the Orange Line stations on their bike. I just had an email from a former staff member of mine who used to be my planning deputy, who is now living in London, was in Amsterdam, and said they have, something I want to talk to you about. They have these bike rental pods at transit stations. So if you get off the transit station, you can rent a bike and ride it to some other pod and leave it there. It's Paris has something like this too, for I believe for cars, if not for bikes, and it's something we ought to look at too. Bikes are a wave of the future in this town, and necessity is the motherhood of invention, and people are starting to use bikes like you are. 3 miles is a nice ride, because it's better than the alternative, and so people are looking for alternatives, and we ought to encourage them. Bike infrastructure normally is not all that expensive. Sometimes it can be. The Pacific Coast Highway, the beach bike path is not cheap, but it's also one of the great recreational amenities in the world, and it was a good investment.
You're going to give the last word, Susan. I think that's our time is up. I want to thank all of our panelists for being here today and sharing their perspectives and initiating some good discussion. I want to thank all of you for being here and asking excellent questions. I remind you to fill out your blue forms before you go, to make sure that you know the next session starts at 11. So go around, look at the exhibitor, say hello to people. Also, don't forget to put your bingo card in. You can win some fabulous prizes, which Stuart Walton has right there. Thank you all for being here.
That looks good. Is this book any good? Oh.
Thank you.
Good to meet you.
Good to meet you too.
All right. Keep up the good work. Good to see you, Zeb.
Pleasure.
How are you?
Good. How you doing?
Thanks, Art.
I'm okay.
Joe, nice to see you.
You really did stay out of the debate. Art, pleasure.
We're looking for projects. We don't make calls. Good luck.
Great panel.
Thank you so much, gentlemen.
Oh, thank you.
Crystal.
Crystal, hi, Joe.